The starship Ecliptica drifted through the quiet void, its stealth systems masking it from prying eyes. Captain Elias Merrick stared out the observation window, his jaw tense. The mission had been a success, technically. They had retrieved critical data about the alien forces threatening the Sol sector, but the cost had been high. Friends lost, ships destroyed, and now they had a prisoner. An alien spy. Her name, or at least the name she gave them, was Zyala. She was unlike any enemy he'd ever encountered. Slender, with shimmering, translucent skin that refracted light in a cascade of colors, her form seemed almost ethereal. Her eyes, dark and endless, carried an intensity that could freeze a man in place. She wasn't just another operative. She was a direct agent of the Velcarithian Empress, Cyrenexus, a being so feared across the galaxy that even her name was whispered with caution. Zyala had been caught attempting to sabotage one of humanity's deep space relays. The data she carried contained detailed plans of Velcarithian troop movements, enough to turn the tide of the war. Interrogation was inevitable, and Merrick hated it. Not because he felt pity, at least not at first, but because he knew the methods his superiors would use. When he first met her in the containment chamber, Zyala didn't beg, plead, or even resist. Instead, she observed him with an unnerving calm, her voice soft but laced with venom. "You think you've won because you've captured me? You don't understand the Empress's reach. Your kind is fragile, Captain. You can't fathom what's coming." Her words gnawed at him in the nights that followed. Merrick wasn't new to war, but this enemy was different. The Velcarithians weren't fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for domination, for the annihilation of what they deemed lesser species. And yet, Zyala didn't seem fanatical. She seemed resigned, as if she too were a pawn in a much larger game. Days turned into weeks, and something shifted. Merrick was tasked with overseeing her confinement, a role he despised but couldn't escape. In their conversations, if they could even be called that, he began to see glimpses of the person beneath the soldier. Zyala wasn't emotionless. She was caged, her loyalty to the Empress forged from fear and necessity. She spoke of her homeworld, Velcaris Prime, a place of endless crystalline plains and skies that danced with electric storms. It sounded beautiful, but her voice trembled when she described it. "Why fight for her if you fear her so much?" Merrick asked one evening, leaning against the wall of her cell. Zyala hesitated, her gaze dropping for the first time. "Because there's no escape. The Empress doesn't forgive. She doesn't forget." But there was more, Merrick realized. Zyala wasn't just any spy. She was someone important to the Velcarithian hierarchy. He suspected she wasn't here by choice. The idea tugged at something deep within him, a sense of duty not just to humanity, but to something greater. Then came the day everything changed. A Velcarithian warfleet had tracked the Ecliptica. It was clear. Someone had betrayed their position. The ship was outnumbered and outgunned, its destruction all but certain. Alarms blared, and chaos erupted. Merrick made his way to the bridge, barking orders to his crew, when he found Zyala standing in the doorway of her cell. The energy field restraining her had been deactivated. "How?" he began, but she cut him off. "They're not here to rescue me," she said, her voice sharp. "They're here to destroy this ship and everyone on it, including me. The Empress doesn't leave loose ends." Merrick didn't trust her, not fully, but the desperation in her voice, the unguarded fear in her eyes, convinced him. Against his better judgment, he armed her and gave her access to the tactical systems. Together, they coordinated a counterstrike. Zyala's knowledge of Velcarithian tactics was invaluable. She anticipated their every move, guiding the Ecliptica through a storm of plasma fire. She even risked her life, venturing into the ship's exposed engineering section to manually reroute power to the weapons array. The battle was brutal, but they emerged victorious, barely. The Velcarithian fleet was shattered, and the Ecliptica limped away to safety. Merrick stood in the aftermath, bloodied and exhausted, staring at Zyala. "You could have let us die," he said. She met his gaze, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "I could have, but I didn't." Over the following months, Zyala became an unlikely ally. She shared critical intelligence about the Velcarithian hierarchy, the weaknesses in their fleet formations, even the vulnerabilities of Empress Syra Nexus herself. But it wasn't just her knowledge that changed the tide. It was her willingness to fight alongside humanity, to risk everything for a cause she had once sought to destroy. Trust wasn't easily earned. Many in Marek's crew viewed her with suspicion and some outright hostility. But Zyala endured it all with quiet resilience. She wasn't fighting for approval or redemption. She was fighting because, for the first time, she had a choice. As the war escalated, Marek and Zyala grew closer. Their bond wasn't just forged in the fires of battle, but in the quiet moments between. They talked of what could come after the war, of a future where their peoples might coexist, where destruction wouldn't be the only answer. In the final confrontation with Empress Syra Nexus, Zyala's loyalty was tested to its limits. The Empress attempted to sway her, to remind her of the power and prestige she had abandoned. But Zyala stood firm, standing side by side with Marek as they led the charge against the Velcarithian stronghold. When the dust settled and the Empress's reign ended, Zyala was no longer seen as a spy or an enemy. She was a hero, a symbol of what could be achieved when fear gave way to hope. And as Marek stood with her on the bridge of the Ecliptica, gazing out at the stars, he realized that the war hadn't just been about survival. It had been about change, about proving that even in the darkest times, redemption was possible. "Ready for the next mission?" he asked, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Zyala returned the smile, her eyes glinting with determination. Always. As the Ecliptica sailed through the vast expanse of uncharted space, Marek couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. Humanity had emerged victorious, but the galaxy was still scarred. The Velcarithian Empire's fall had left a power vacuum, and chaos was spreading through the sectors. Warlords, rogue fleets, and opportunistic factions now vied for dominance, threatening to undo the fragile alliances forged during the war. Zyala had become a beacon of hope for many. Her defection was proof that even the staunchest enemies could change, but it also made her a target. Velcarithian loyalists viewed her as a traitor, and their whispers of vengeance had grown into open threats. Marek knew they had to tread carefully. Their mission was clear: venture into Velcarithian space and dismantle remnants of the Empress's war machine before they could regroup. But it wasn't just about weapons or fleets. Reports suggested something far more sinister. Deep within the ruins of Velcaris Prime, a hidden facility remained active, its purpose shrouded in mystery. Zyala's knowledge of her people's secrets was invaluable, but even she seemed uneasy when the name Project Zenith was mentioned. It wasn't something the Empress spoke of openly, Zyala explained during a briefing. But I've heard whispers. It was her contingency plan. A way to ensure the Velcarithian legacy, no matter the cost. Marek frowned. What kind of contingency? Zyala hesitated. I don't know. But if she invested resources into it, it's dangerous. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands. The crew of the Ecliptica prepared for the mission, their tension palpable. They had faced countless battles, but the unknown always carried its own kind of dread. As they entered Velcarithian space, the remnants of the once mighty empire were starkly evident. Derelict ships drifted aimlessly, and abandoned stations loomed like ghosts. Yet, there was no sign of Project Zenith. Until they reached Velcaris Prime. The planet was a shadow of the vibrant world Zyala had described. Its crystalline plains were shattered, its electric storms now wild and erratic. But amidst the devastation, sensors picked up a faint energy signature. It was coming from beneath the surface, deep within a mountain range that had been hollowed out into a fortress. Marek led the landing team himself, with Zyala at his side. The fortress was heavily fortified, but the defenses were automated, suggesting that the Velcarithians had abandoned it, or perhaps something worse. As they ventured deeper, the eerie silence was broken only by the hum of machinery. The corridors were lined with intricate carvings, depicting the Empress's rise to power and the subjugation of countless worlds. It was a testament to her hubris. But at the heart of the fortress, they found something unexpected. Rows upon rows of stasis pods. Each one contained a Velcarithian, their features serene as if asleep. Zyala's breath caught as she recognized some of the faces. They're elites, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Generals, scientists, advisors, the Empress's most loyal followers. Marek's jaw tightened. She was building an army, frozen and ready for whenever she needed them. Before they could investigate further, an alarm blared. The pods began to hum with energy, their systems activating. Zyala rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the controls. "They're waking up," she shouted. "We have to shut this down now." Marek and his team moved quickly, setting charges around the facility. But as the first pod opened, a figure stepped out. It was not just any Valkyrithian. It was one of the Empress's personal enforcers, a being named Zaldris who had been infamous for his ruthlessness. Zaldris's eyes locked onto Zyala, recognition flaring with fury. "Traitor," he hissed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You will pay for your betrayal." Marek didn't hesitate. "Everyone, fall back." "Zyala, can you override the system?" "I'm trying," she yelled, her focus unwavering despite the chaos. As more pods opened, the team found themselves outnumbered. Zaldris advanced, his crystalline armor gleaming, but Marek stood his ground. He fired his weapon, but Zaldris deflected the shots with ease, his movements unnaturally fast. Zyala finally managed to trigger a manual override. The pods began to shut down, one by one, but it wasn't enough. Zaldris lunged at her, his blade raised, but Marek intercepted him. The two clashed, the sound of metal against metal ringing out. "You fight for a dying empire," Marek growled. "It's over," Zaldris sneered. "The Empress's vision will never die." Before he could strike again, Zyala intervened, using a stolen Valkyrithian weapon to disable him. Zaldris fell to the ground, immobilized but still alive. With the charges set and the facility's systems destabilizing, the team barely escaped before the fortress erupted in a cascade of explosions. Valkyris Prime's surface cracked, and the hidden facility was swallowed into the depths. Back on the Ecliptica, Marek and Zyala stood in the observation deck, watching the distant planet. "We stopped them this time," Marek said. "But this isn't over, is it?" Zyala shook her head. "The Empress's shadow will linger. But as long as we stand together, there's hope." Marek glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. Together, then, as the ship turned toward its next destination, the stars stretched before them, promising new challenges and the hope of a better future. As the Ecliptica sailed through the cosmos, the aftershocks of their victory still reverberated throughout the crew. They had destroyed a hidden arm of the Valkyrithian Empire, but they knew that it was only the beginning. Even with Empress Syra Nexus's fall and the disruption of Project Zenith, the galaxy was far from safe. The remnants of her empire were scattered, but not broken, and with each passing day, new threats emerged, rising from the ashes of the old regime. Zyala had become more than just a former spy in their ranks. She was an ally, a friend, and a symbol of the potential for change. Yet, even she seemed haunted by what lay ahead. The weight of her past, of the choices she had made under the tyranny of the Empress, lingered in her eyes. She had defected, but the scars of her old life were not so easily erased. Marek found her in the command center late one night, her gaze fixed on the swirling nebula outside the viewport. The stars cast a dim glow over her translucent skin, accentuating the quiet strength that had earned her the respect of the crew. "You're quiet," he said, stepping up beside her. "Is something bothering you?" Zyala turned her head, her dark eyes meeting his with a depth that was both captivating and sorrowful. "It's just everything. We stopped one part of the Empress's plan, but there are others. More soldiers, more weapons. It's not just the Valkyrithians anymore. There are factions rising, people who still believe in her vision, even if she's gone." Marek sighed, his thoughts mirroring her own. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. The galaxy doesn't change overnight. But it can," she said, her voice firm with newfound resolve. "It must. If we don't fight for it now, for a new future, then what was all of this for? What was the point of risking everything?" Marek's gaze softened. "I'm with you. We all are." Her lips quirked into a half-smile, and for the first time in a long while, the weight of her burden seemed to ease. But there was no time for rest. A new mission awaited them, one that would take them deep into the heart of the galaxy, into a region known for its lawlessness and brutal warlords. Intelligence had surfaced that the Velcarithian loyalists were gathering forces there, building a new fleet to rise from the ashes of their once proud empire. As they prepared for their next mission, the crew of the Ecliptica was more unified than ever before. The scars of the past were visible on everyone, but they were no longer alone in their struggle. Each member of the crew had found strength in the others, and together, they were a force to be reckoned with. When they reached the fringes of the lawless sector, it was as if the universe itself held its breath. The stars here were dimmer, the space darker. The remnants of the Velcarithian fleet were scattered among the debris of destroyed worlds. Their new allies, rogue factions, warlords, mercenaries, were building a new power. The galaxy was a powder keg, and every spark could ignite another war. Merrick and Zyala stood on the bridge, staring out at the swirling maelstrom of ships ahead of them. Intelligence was clear. The remnants of the Velcarithian forces had formed a new alliance, and they were preparing for an all-out war. Ready to dive into the fire? Merrick asked, glancing at Zyala. Zyala's expression was unreadable, but her voice was steady. It's the only way forward. We have to stop them before they get any stronger. The Ecliptica advanced, slipping through the darkness with the precision and stealth of a ghost. The warlords' fleets were massive, but they were disorganized, lacking the coordination that had once made the Velcarithians formidable. It was a perfect opportunity for a surgical strike. The first move came swiftly. The Ecliptica launched a wave of stealth drones that infiltrated the warlord fleet's communication systems, sowing confusion and chaos among their ranks. For hours, the crew worked in perfect harmony, disabling ships, disrupting formations, and hitting their targets with surgical precision. But then, the unexpected happened. The fleet wasn't just made up of disorganized warlords. There was a hidden strength among them, an ally who had been waiting in the wings. The elusive Emperor Karaz, a former Velcarithian general who had turned rogue, revealed himself. His ship, the Ruthless Sovereign, appeared from the shadows, an imposing vessel of unmatched power. He was a man of ambition, with a vision that rivaled the Empress's, and his forces were more disciplined than any of them had anticipated. Karaz's voice came through the comms, a deep, resonant growl that sent a chill through the ship. You dare defy me, humans? You will regret this. The galaxy belongs to us, and you will be crushed beneath the weight of our will. Marek's grip tightened on the armrest. Not if we have anything to say about it. With the odds now stacked against them, the crew of the Ecliptica rallied. Zyala, in the heat of the moment, suggested an audacious plan. They would infiltrate Karaz's flagship, disable its command systems, and turn the tide of the battle from within. It was a dangerous gambit, but there was no other choice. The plan was set into motion. Zyala, Merrick, and a small strike team boarded a shuttle, making their way to the heart of the enemy fleet. As they neared the Ruthless Sovereign, Zyala's mind raced. She had faced the Velcarithian Empire's most terrifying generals, but Karaz was a different breed. His reputation was one of cruelty and ruthlessness, and she knew this would be their most dangerous mission yet. Stay close, Merrick said, his voice calm despite the rising tension. We're doing this together. The shuttle docked with the enemy ship, and the team moved swiftly through the halls, disabling security measures and taking down guards with precise, silent strikes. But as they reached the command deck, they were met with an unexpected sight. Emperor Karaz was waiting for them. You think you can disrupt my plans so easily? Karaz's voice was filled with mockery as he stood tall, surrounded by his elite guards. Zyala stepped forward, her voice steady. This ends today, Karaz. Your vision is nothing but a path to destruction. The battle that ensued was brutal. Karaz was a fierce opponent, wielding his advanced weaponry with lethal precision. But Zyala and Merrick, fueled by years of pain and determination, fought as one, pushing Karaz's forces back. In the end, it was Zyala who dealt the final blow, disarming Karaz and deactivating his flagship's weapon systems. With the Ruthless Sovereign crippled, the remaining warlord fleets fell into disarray, and the Ecliptica's crew delivered the final strikes. As the galaxy watched, the remnants of the Velcarithian rebellion collapsed, and peace, however fragile, was restored, for now. The Ecliptica had once again proven that even in the darkest times, the human spirit could outlast any enemy. With the warlords defeated, Merrick and Zyala stood together on the bridge, staring out into the vastness of space. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, they felt a flicker of hope. "Ready for what comes next?" Merrick asked. Zyala smiled, her eyes bright with renewed purpose. "Always." As the Ecliptica drifted through the stars, its crew basking in the hard-earned victory, the galaxy was beginning to heal. The scattered remnants of the Velcarithian warlords had been defeated, their ambitions crushed, and the power vacuum they had hoped to exploit was now firmly under the watch of the united forces of humanity and their allies. For the first time in centuries, the universe felt quieter, more at peace. But even in peace, there were whispers of the past, of things left unsaid, of dangers that had yet to fully emerge. Merrick stood at the observation window of the Ecliptica, watching the streaking stars as they sped past. A part of him felt unsettled, as if the universe was holding its breath. They had won this battle, but there were always more shadows lurking, just out of sight. Zyala joined him, her presence as steady and comforting as ever. Though they had come so far, the scars of their journey were still fresh. She stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the infinite stretch of space. "You're thinking about what's next, aren't you?" she asked, her voice soft but perceptive. Merrick nodded. "I can't help it. There's always more, right? The universe is too vast, too unpredictable to stay quiet for long." She smiled gently, her hand finding his. "We've already changed it, Merrick. We've set something in motion. The galaxy might never be the same, but that's not a bad thing. It means we have the chance to rebuild, this time on our terms." Her words had a quiet finality to them, a sense of closure. Merrick knew what she meant. The old power structures were shattered, but new ones had been born. Humanity had proven itself capable of leading the charge, of standing against empires and legacies of oppression, and forging its own future. "Sometimes," he said, squeezing her hand, "I wonder if we really understand what we've started. How can we?" Zyala's smile widened, though there was a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. "We'll understand in time. Right now, though, it's enough to know we've done the right thing. Together." Merrick felt a sense of peace wash over him, a rare feeling after everything they had been through. The echoes of war and battle still reverberated in the corners of his mind, but he could see a future beyond them now, a future built on trust, redemption, and unity. They didn't need to say more. Words weren't necessary in that moment. As the Ecliptica soared onward, leaving behind the shattered fragments of a broken empire, Merrick and Zyala knew that they had done more than defeat an enemy. They had set the stage for something new. A new chapter for humanity and the galaxy was unfolding, one that could change the course of history forever. And the Ecliptica, with its crew of brave, determined souls, would be there to see it through.